Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you all today. I have some slides, Steve, as I mentioned to you earlier, and as well as that, you know, I can demo the app. And then what I can do as well is talk a little bit about the research that we're involved in, and just some of the organizations that we're working with. But feel free to stop me at any time and ask me any questions. You know, I'd like it to be as interactive as possible.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, so first of all, I suppose a little bit about patientMpower. So we started probably nearly about 3.5 years ago now, and I started with a friend of mine, really with a view to the fact that we saw there was a disconnect between patients getting discharged from hospitals and then being able to manage treatment at home. And I got interested in this space kind of firsthand when my own father was had a terminal illness, and in his case it was cancer. But it was very much, you know, while you can get really good care in a hospital, the majority of the time, you know, you're at home and you're wondering, you know, what kind of things should I be doing? What kind of data can I be recording? Trying to organize your medications and information. So there's many challenges, and a big area that we're trying to target is the ability to empower people to better manage their treatment outside of the hospital setting. So as part of that, we're now kind of, I would say, on kind of the next phase of our development, where we're based on what we see people are doing, we're trying to give people actionable insights. And I've got some examples of what we're working on in that area, which I can share with you that are very specific to pulmonary fibrosis. Tied with that, we're working with different partners about how we can help accelerate development of new treatments and help people that want to be recruited into clinical trials to find those trials more easily. For any of you that are fans of The Economist, there was a really good edition recently that gave over its front page, its editorial, and many pages inside. And the front page was titled Dr. You, and it was really on this theme about how you can help transform your own care. And it was very interesting. There was letters into the editor a couple of weeks after this edition, and some doctors wrote in saying, you know, patients need to go back into their box and, you know, we know best. And I'm a firm believer that's an old way of thinking, and the much more progressive doctors and the vast majority of doctors that we're working with view that better informed, better empowered patients can be more active participants in their own healthcare, and data and having access to good quality data is a key enabler for that. So we were recently recognized by a global medtech competition called the IPF Catalyst. So it was held, the final was held in January in Chicago, and it was a year-long process of companies and organizations applying with ideas around what they would do to help IPF patients and to help improve knowledge into this disease. So we were very fortunate to be chosen as one of the winners. There was 3 winners who shared $1 million. And part of what I'm going to show you is some of the areas that we're developing. So the money is tied to deliverables and actions that we're going to implement in our platform. So I'll go through some of those. So first of all, who can use patientMpower? So it's free to download on the App Store. So it works for all Apple and Android, both smartphones and tablet devices. It's targeted at any pulmonary fibrosis patient, and that includes IPF. But we also have just very recently launched lung transplant variants on iOS with Android coming later this month. One of the things that we've been working on since we won that award in Chicago in January is a care and mentor versions of the app and more easy ways to share your data and to generate reports. So we're close to having that launched. That will be coming out in the next month. So the idea here is that anyone who wants to help a PF patient with their care can be invited to be part of that care and share the data. So it's a much more easy way of sharing data and getting people to help with your care. So that's something we'll be, we've got input from quite a number of patients that have been using our platform for quite a while. That's something we're big believers in. So I'll give my contact details out and feel, what we want is people to feedback, what works well, what doesn't work well, what they like, what they don't like, what ideas they'd like to see in the app. So there's a lot of text in this slide, but this is what we see as the benefits of patientMpower for a pulmonary fibrosis patient, and we've got much of this feedback from patients, from people who are users of our app. So I suppose first of all, it allows them to track a wide range of things related to their lung health. That includes everything from what we would term objective data. So that's spirometry or pulmonary function tests. So that's I suppose hard data that you get in your clinic encounters. But what we're enabling is that people can track this outside of the hospital setting, and I'll get into why we believe that's a very beneficial thing. And actually, just last night I was at a talk. So I suppose first of all I should say we're based in Dublin, just across the water from you, and there was a pulmonary fibrosis conference on here yesterday evening. And there were some experts from the UK presenting at it, and one of whom was Toby Marr, and Anne-Marie Russell was another one. And both of them were involved in early trials in the Brompton Hospital in London, demonstrating the benefits of home spirometry. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. So that would be kind of one of the objective types of data that can be logged. But then we also enable people to log subjective data. So that could be their quality of life or how breathless they are. And I suppose where we're starting to see real benefits is where maybe historically, and we can all be guilty of this, where someone says, I don't feel well, but maybe I don't want to kind of be bothering the doctor. What we're trying to help people put together is that they have this subjective, I don't feel well information combined with the objective, okay, my numbers are starting to decline. Maybe I should be getting help now and not waiting till my next appointment in 2 months' time. So it's that sort of combination of data we think is really powerful. Now, it should be said that, early intervention could be extremely beneficial, but in some cases, with some exacerbations in this disease, it could be that it's something that they can't do anything about, but at least if there's earlier warning of it, there is the potential that something could be done. So The other value that we see is the ability to share this data. So we've been generating reports for people to share with their doctors. Coming with in the next month, people will be able to generate these reports automatically. So when you go into your appointment, whether it's every 3 or 4 months with your ILD center, when they ask you, how have you been, you'll be able to give the descriptive, this is how I've been. Oh, and here's a printout of, what my numbers have been looking like of my pulmonary function test or of my oxygen saturation numbers. So you'll have a much more descriptive view as to kind of, to describe kind of your care. And there's also the research benefits, which I'll get into in a bit more, in a bit later on. So we've done quite a number of studies so far. We've done a study with a US group called the PF Warriors. Many of you will have heard of Bill Vick. He's a well-known patient advocate in this space. We've also done a couple of studies with different user groups in Ireland, and we have a study starting soon with a group in St Mary's Hospital in London. And actually we were just over with Papworth Hospital last Friday as well. What we're seeing with the feedback from all of these groups is that the vast majority of people are saying they like it. They want to continue using it after the study, and a large proportion felt it gave them a greater sense of control in managing their lung health. So we're starting to publish this data at conferences, specialist conferences, like the American Thoracic Society Conference, European Respiratory Society meetings. So we're committed to publishing our data and demonstrating how we believe this approach is beneficial to patients. So on our Facebook page and on our own website, we've got links to different stories of patients describing the value they get from patientMpower. So if any of you are interested, I'd encourage you to go onto our website, our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and you can browse through these and see what other people have been saying about patientMpower. And there's a few more now. Any questions at that point? I'm just conscious I'm doing all the talking, so but happy to keep going if there's no questions at this point.
What I'm interested in, I saw my GP at the end of the week, and I showed him the readings on the app, and he found them very, very useful. But because they weren't in the format that he's used to, I'm having lung function testing on Monday so that you can see it in the format he's. Are you going to use the same format as the GP?
So what format would the GP like? So that's really good feedback and the kind of thing that we'd like to kind of help you with.
I'm not. He says they got it in graph form with the system that they've got in the practice. But I can find out those details for you and let you know.
Yeah, that'd be great because we're able to reproduce the data in different formats. So different graph views, different table views, and we're working on new ways of generating that. So yeah, if you could find out what format that would be useful. One of the things that we're going to be working on with St Mary's Hospital in London is we're talking to their IT people about how the data can flow back into their systems as well. So the more input we get on that, the better. But if you've got any feedback on that, we'd be happy to look at that, Steve.
No problem.
Okay, so one of the central areas that we enable you to track is your pulmonary function testing. Now, like I was saying, so both Toby Marr and Anne-Marie Russell at the conference I was at last night were describing, a study they did in the Brompton Hospital around the benefit of tracking this in the home environment, and they've published papers on this. And it can enable both you and your healthcare team to understand better how the disease is progressing. Now, unfortunately, it is a progressive disease. The two main treatments on the market do slow down the rate of progression of IPF, but different people, some people, Bill Vick as an example, he was diagnosed I think 7 or 8 years ago, and touch wood, he's still performing quite well. He is using supplementary oxygen in certain situations, but then unfortunately, other people decline more quickly. So I suppose the benefit of tracking this is it can help you understand how it's affecting you. You can see if the important measure is called forced vital capacity is remaining steady, or if there's any declines. I suppose what we would say is we would advise you to contact your healthcare team if there is a significant decline. Now, for a healthy person with no lung disease, if they were measuring this day by day, you'd see minor fluctuations. And I have some graphs of kind of large plots of data in a little while. So it's where over a period of time that you're seeing it decline, that's where there is the potential to contact your healthcare team, and maybe it could be something that's an infection, and it could be cleared up before kind of maybe something more kind of serious happens. But this is an area that we're still researching. So we capture what's called the forced vital capacity. Now, forced vital capacity is the main measure that's used in clinical trials in IPF. It's measured in liters, and what it's measuring is the amount of air that you're able to blow out in that one forced blow over about 6 seconds. And it's the key measure they track in your clinic appointments and also in the clinical trials. It might also be represented as a percentage predicted FVC. So what that means is for someone of your age, of your gender, of your height and ethnicity, what would the forced vital capacity be like, and what percentage of someone with your demographics, what would it be like? So some people are more used to the percent predicted, but what we're measuring is the absolute or the actual measure of forced vital capacity measured in liters. We also measure a range of other parameters as part of the test as well, which includes the FEV1 and FEF 2575. Now, those are more important for other lung diseases, but some people who have IPF may also have COPD, and FEV1 would be the common measure that's tracked for COPD. So we also have an integrated pulse oximeter that connects with the app. So I've got, I'm showing the screen of an iPhone and an Android Samsung phone that I have in front of me here. So you're able to log in to the same account from multiple devices. So say for example, if you had a smartphone, you could also log into the account from a tablet device. So looking at the screen on the right hand side, so at the top we have an air quality indicator. So what that's showing is the air quality, the outdoor air quality near where you are. So what it's doing is it's taking your location and then it's finding the nearest air quality sensor to you. So we link in with air quality sensors in the UK, and they're located right around the UK. Probably maybe one thing we should add there is where's the nearest air quality sensor to use. That's probably something that we'll add in there.
I think
so
the nearest to us is Eccles.
How far away is that?
It's probably about 12 miles away.
Okay. So what we're trying to do with this is, I suppose, both the British Lung Foundation are very active on this, and many other advocacy groups in this area. And where the air quality is amber or worse, it's advised that people with serious lung diseases should do any vigorous exercise indoors, or rather than be outdoors. So that's the advice that's given. I don't know what the air quality is like near you, but probably I would imagine it's much worse in London than it is where you are. But there's often kind of different local variables. So does it generally show as green on your phone, Steve?
Yes.
Okay, good to hear. So underneath that, we have the medication reminder. So that when you click that section, it brings you into the medication page. And here you get a list of your medications that have been scheduled. And both from the home screen and the red button here, you can add a new medication. Now, one thing, I know you're on Android, Steve. So we did an update recently to Apple, and it's coming in the next week or two to Android, where if you want to add a drug that isn't in our database, you're still able to add it. So you'd be able to kind of put in your own, if there was some sort of supplement that you had or some drug that wasn't in our database, you could still enter it. But what you do is you enter the first few letters of the drug, and then if we have it in our database, after you type in those first couple of letters, you can see it there, and you'll be able to select it, and then you'll be able to add the times that you want to take it. So you'll be able to go in here and change the time or the number of the capsules you take. You get the medication reminders then kind of popping up on your screen. Okay. So then on the back to the home screen again, what you have then underneath there is you have a little progress indicators. That's telling you kind of how you're doing against taking all of your medications. And underneath there, then you have the FVC, the forced vital capacity, your oxygen saturation, and breathlessness, and some other parameters there.
Breathe normally 2 to 3 times. Take a slow, deep breath, as deep as you can. Then blow as hard and as fast as you can into the mouth. Keep going until you completely empty your lungs. Slow for at least 6 seconds.
So what we're trying to do is to replicate as much as possible the experience and the instructions that you get in the hospital setting.
Yes.
You do the test in the same way. It's like to blow as hard and fast as you can.
Keep
So then when you get the test result done, sorry, I went off the screen too quickly, you get the ability to add a journal entry. So if you kind of click add notes, it goes into this screen. So it allows you to record, you know, kind of any kind of notes that you want to add. You can take a picture of yourself. I'll take a selfie so you can see what I look like. The idea there is if you just had any kind of skin irritation or something that you know, or anything that you thought was relevant, you could add it into the notes there. Or if you want to add in anything kind of free text as well, you can add that in as well. So the idea here, this is kind of a journal or a notebook for yourself that you can kind of record and timestamp this to go along with the spirometry reading that you just did. So back out to the dashboard page for a moment. So then we also have an integrated pulse oximeter. So again, this is a Bluetooth device. So when you go to the screen to add it, so it'll just kind of give you the instructions that to put it on your finger, and then when it detects the Bluetooth connection, it'll start the reading. Each of these needs a pairing for the very first time. So I'll show you where you would do that, but you would only do that for the very first time that you would record a measurement, and after that, then each time you just add the data that you want to record. So let me just put the pulse oximeter on my finger. Yep. So then when the reading is done, you're able to enter if you're on oxygen. So then if you are on oxygen, you're able to put in the flow rate that you were on at that particular time. And then the next thing that we can add is things like breathlessness. So what we're recording with breathlessness is an internationally used scale called the MMRC. So it's a scale that's used by many healthcare settings, and while there are other breathlessness scales that are used, any of the pulmonary fibrosis doctors that we have talked to feel it's a good one to use in this particular setting. A large reason for that is that many of the other scales are, 10 or 15 different options. So it's kind of very hard to decide, are you a 0, are you 1, or 8, 9, 10, because there's so many different options to choose from. So here it's there's 5 options from 0 to 4, ranging from I only get breathless with strenuous exercise, through to I'm too breathless to leave the house, or I'm breathless when dressing. So what's useful is for people to record the level of breathlessness that they feel. And again, that can be combined as part of a report or as part of the subjective data that's tied together with the objective data that you're recording. So then in each of those areas, when you click into them, it can bring you to a section kind of around with graphs of each of the individual areas, and you can break those graphs out by day, by week, by month, or year. And you can also then, clicking kind of a little button for a table view, you can see it in a table view measurement. So, you know, there's that reading. 97% was the one I did a few moments ago. And you can click over and back between graph view and a table view. So then other options for adding data. So for example, if you, you know, a lot of our users have the spirometer that works with the app, but not many have the pulse oximeters because it's a pretty expensive one, unfortunately. It's a Nonin 3230. But where you had an existing maybe pulse oximeter that, you know, doesn't connect with our app, you can click the button that says add data manually. So in here, you could add, you know, the oxygen saturation that you measured with your own one, and then just click save. So, you know, you have the numbers recorded, just log it in there, and it's tied in with your data report. The same with, you know, other data that you might want to add. You could add, you know, your heart rate, you could add your weight, or you could add your temperature as well. The weight here is in stones and pounds, but in the settings section, you can change it to the units that you would prefer. If you don't like stones, pounds, you could change it to pounds only, which is typically the US way, or kilos for people that want to use metric. Is all of that, is that okay, or any questions on any of that? Sorry, go on, Steve. Yeah, they'll be coming in the next few weeks in the Android version. So there's they'll be coming quite soon. So there'll be the care version of the app. There'll be the lung transplant version of the app. But there will also be reminders for doing spirometry. So you'll be able to get kind of custom reminders for recording your spirometry, or any other measures you want to do, such as, you know, blood pressure measurements as well. So the other thing then, which I was just chatting to Steve about earlier, there is different options for logging step counting. The step counting, so I don't have it linked in on this one, because there are a couple of different test ones. But in the settings section for Android, you can set whether you want it off Google Fit or Fitbit. And then if you do have it set to Google Fit, you have to link your Google Fit account, or you can also link a Fitbit account is the other option. So it depends on the you know, what particular step counting service that you want to use. I've got a slide which I'll talk through the various options. Where possible, if people carry a smartphone around in their pocket, we just advise people just to use the smartphone. You don't need to buy a separate step counter. So we talked about the medication, we talked about the My Data section. In the calendar section, you know, where you can add the journals, you can also add appointments. So you can add an appointment, and you could add in kind of questions that you want to ask your doctor, and add the location where it's on. The settings section, so this is where You would change any units preference. If you want to change the units for your weight, or set any reminders, that would be in this particular section. And then the final area I just wanted to show you is the support. So here, this is where if you kind of click in here, you'll be able to just type a question and we'll be able to get back to you just to answer any questions that you have on using the app. But you'll also be able to get us on email and on phone as well, and I'll give you those details shortly. So just back to the slide for a few moments. So for the step counting on iPhone, there's two options. You can either use, we advise people to use the Apple Health, so it's very easy to set that up, and then just carry the phone. You could also set up Fitbit on iPhone. If you use an iPad, the only option is Fitbit. So you would need to carry or to have a separate tracker. And I suppose two reasons for that. One, it's probably not very practical to carry around an iPad, but the Apple Health app doesn't work on iPad, so there needs to be a different method anyway. For Android phones, we recommend Google Fit to set up. It's a little bit more involved in setting up Apple Health, but we can send on details, and actually we'll be talking Steve through just how to set that up. Or Fitbit will also work on Android phones, and on Android tablets, you'd need to carry or to wear a device that would track your steps, either a Fitbit or a Google Fit compatible tracker, the other option. So we have some web pages just with information on kind of some of the things I've covered already, and I can email those on to you, Steve, or I might have sent some of them already to you. We also have a set of YouTube videos, so we will be updating these because obviously we're making changes to the app all the time. And in some cases there needs to be slight differences in how you do things on Android versus iOS. But there are kind of step-by-step guides in terms of downloading the app, setting up the app, and various other things that you need to set up. So for reaching us, you can reach us at support@patientMpower.com. You can get us on Facebook or Twitter, and the support button on the app that I mentioned to you, or also on telephone. I'll email you on the telephone number, Steve. And we also, as I mentioned, you can get information on our YouTube channel and on the website. So any questions on that before I kind of move on, just talking a little bit about the research that we're doing? Yes, exactly. And actually, I've got a couple of graphs coming up which we can talk through that a little bit more, Steve. Okay, so all of the data that we collect is stored in a secure cloud we term our digital biobank, and we believe this is a very powerful tool for research into IPF. 10 years ago, there was very little known about the disease. It's been public, and to a large degree, a lot of people still don't know about IPF. But at least today, there's a couple of treatments available, so there's more focus on it.
organizations like Action Pulmonary Fibrosis, the PLS, and others are heavily involved in an umbrella organization called the EU IPSS that we're working with. And one of the things they've launched in the last year is awareness information for doctors and for general practitioners about better diagnosing IPS. So there is more hope, and the other really interesting thing is there's a lot of pharmaceutical companies developing new drugs in the IPS space. So while you can't get too excited because it's, when things are in early phase clinical trials, there's a long way to go. But it does show that based on the science, people do believe there could be further improvements that could be made. And the other thing is then there's also the potential to get recruited into those upcoming clinical trials. On that very point that you made, Steve, so one of the concepts that we presented in Chicago in January, where we were one of the winners in the IPS Catalyst competition. One of the areas that we presented that we would develop is that we would develop some automation to monitor certain parts of the data. Now, without getting into too much detail, there is a lot of complexity to that, and there's also regulations around that. So we're having to talk to the health regulators and make sure we follow the correct procedures, that we talk to computer science, to statistical experts, and also to expert doctors in IPS to make sure that we do this correctly. But our plan is, and we've done a lot of the development already, is that we will be able to automatically monitor your forced vital capacity reading and to alert you when we see something that we believe warrants further investigation. I want to stress this isn't available yet, so that, the moment we would advise you to monitor the data yourself, and we're happy to give advice where we can, but ultimately we're not your healthcare provider, but we know how to look at the data with tools to analyze the data. Now, this slide and the next slide is data from one of our clinical trials. This is real data from an IPS patient, and this is their forced vital capacity over time. Now, what we're doing is, if you blow incorrectly into the spirometer and your reading is artificially low, we need a way to detect that was you just didn't blow correctly. So those are represented by the red dots that you see on the screen. The black dot on the screen is where your readings are correct readings. So I'm not going to use the word, so where you've given it a full exertion. And then the blue line that you see is the moving average. So what you can see, what we typically see with a lot of users is what we term the training effect. So on the left-hand side, you see the blue line go up for a little while. That's not necessarily, that's not likely to be that the lung function is improving. It's just that the user got familiar and used to using this particular spirometer. And then there's a period where it's broadly stable, and then you can see a decline where the disease is progressing. This is the exact same data represented in a different way, and this is where we're using, I don't want to get too much into the detail of it, but I want to share with you the type of work we're doing in the background, where we're analyzing the data and then we're marking the whether the green line points downward. See the map, this one here. That's where we're kind of declaring you were making a while ago, Steve, it could be that at that point you also feel unwell, you feel a bit more breathless, maybe you detected, you've got some sort of infection. That would be, so what we would be alerting then is between the combination of both the spirometry data saying that there's something going wrong and also how you feel, that would be well worth contacting your doctor. And the point being then is that when you contact your doctor, you'll be able to say, I don't feel well, feel more breathless, and my FVC trend has declined from 1.6 down to 1.3. So you're combining both the subjective data and also the hard data in terms of the numbers. So that's what we're trying to do as a first step. We believe we'll be able to do much more in the future, but this is kind of the first step that we're hoping to take. And we believe we'll be able to launch this stage later this year, but there's a lot of work to do in terms of implementing this and making sure that we do it in the correct way. Does that make sense, what I was explaining there? Yeah. Yeah. So one of the ITF experts that we're working with, so in some cases, you're 100% correct. In some cases, there's nothing you can do. But in other cases, if there is the potential that there's something going on, that it could be an infection, that if intervened early, it might. So what you raise a very good point. So what we don't want to do is have this, that it over alerts. And what we need to do is to try and adapt it to different people's situations. So we have a lot of work to do on this. But likewise, so for example, if someone has decided to try and go down the road for a lung transplant, if you're declining, it could be that a decline gets you into the bound that you should be reassessed for lung transplant. And that the doctor that's assessing you for lung transplant would want to know that you've declined. So you raise some very, very good points, and in some cases the alerting probably will have no benefit, but in other cases we believe it will have a benefit, and it maybe does need either investigation or alerting depending on the circumstance of the route that you're wanting to go down.
I missed the last point. I couldn't make out fully what you're saying. So for the people not on lung, going for lung transplant, what did you say? There's still data being gathered on the benefits of measuring this in general for IPF patients. But in general, so leaving aside the view about alerting, having the data available when you go in for a consultation, the vast majority of expert IPF doctors we've talked to view it as beneficial for them to understand how you were doing. And it may be for helping kind of tailor your treatment plan. Having that data available is very beneficial. The second point that you're raising about the alerting, you raised some very good points that we're still figuring out. So, I think in some cases, there will be no benefit to the alerting. So we need to adapt for those situations. In other cases, there may be something that the early alerting could have a benefit, and that could be for patients not on the lung transplant pathway as well. But I suppose kind of the summary is we're working on this, and we need to adapt it for different people's situations, and that's part of what we're trying to do. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, Anne-Marie Russell in her talk last night mentioned the rescue pack, and she's someone that we talk to quite regularly. So that's a very good point, Steve. And we'll talk to Anne-Marie and others about that. So it could be the alert to say it looks like there's something going wrong. Maybe consider using, talk to your GP, or if not available, maybe consider using your rescue pack. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Okay. Could you move a little bit closer to the phone? I'm struggling to pick up what you're saying. Yeah, so there's some clinical trials that they're talking about combination therapies, but there's probably in the next 12 months, Toby Maher quoted the number last time, there's probably 3 new drugs moving into phase 3 clinical trial as well. And all of those will have UK test sites as well. So, there definitely is some new options on the way, but obviously the nature of clinical trials, there's inclusion and exclusion criteria about whether you're suitable. One of the things that we're working on, and we will also be launching it this year, is based on the data that you're producing. So taking a step back a moment, all of the drug trials in IPF typically will have what are termed inclusion and exclusion criteria. So they range from, it's open to males and females between, age X and age Y. And then what they'll also have is they'll have boundaries around the percent predicted forced vital capacity. Now, and then also other parameters. What we'll be better able to do is to, based on the data that people are producing within the app and the data within our digital biobank, we'll be able to say, okay, Steve is this age, he's this roughly this percentage predicted FVC, he's on these drugs, therefore we think he's a good potential candidate for this clinical trial taking place in Nottingham. So that, that's all hypothetical. So that's part of what we plan to do. We haven't given it to anyone anonymized at the moment, but we plan to. But what we would plan, or what we will do before that, is that we will contact people that we think might be suitable for a clinical trial. Say, would you be interested? Even before we pass on the anonymized data. So, I mean, lots of other people, like individual hospitals, do this, and drug companies go to a hospital and, kind of say, oh, do you have any potential patients who would match this criteria? But I suppose what we're doing is we're doing this in, I think, about 10 countries now. So we're, these drug trials typically, so for a new drug that would come to in for IPF, we'll need about probably about the Roche and Boehringer Ingelheim drugs that were approved. They were around 100 sites, 600 patients across maybe 10, 15 countries. So what we're trying to do is to be able to kind of accelerate the start of those clinical trials, which then means the potential endpoint is brought forward quicker as well. So by having more, I suppose the more users that we have that are generating more data, that brings greater potential to those to having more matches for those clinical trials. Correct. We're very focused on a small number of diseases, and IPF is one of those, and we've got a dedicated database and data set associated with it. We're not currently, however, I am, because of the work we're doing in St. Mary's, I am meant to be meeting quite soon the overall NHS England commissioner to do with pulmonary technology and pulmonary disease. So we very much, we already have it with a study we're doing in Ireland and a deployment we have in the US, where our data is flowing back to the healthcare provider. So we very much see that as the right approach. We want the data to be used so that you benefit and your doctor benefits from it. So technically we will be able to do it, we just need to figure out the right way of doing it. And we plan to kind of make progress in that area. I've been in Chicago twice already this year. I've been to quite a few different UK centres as well. The UK is highly respected in the US, and I think in terms of expertise, you'll get as good expertise in the UK as you will anywhere in the world. In terms of the treatments, I suppose one of the benefits of technology and the internet is best practice and knowledge gets shared really easily. So you'll even see some of the top IPF doctors in the UK are discussing things on Twitter with the top IPF doctors in the US. So, you know, if any of you are active on Twitter, you'll see that, for example. So I wouldn't say the US is any more advanced than the UK. Sorry, say that again. I missed what you said. No. Well, I was going to say it's colder in Chicago, but then given the weather we had recently, it was just as cold and snowy over here. Yes, and Japan as well. And there's a global, actually, so back to the very first slide that I covered. So the organization that ran that competition that we won in Chicago, they are doing a phenomenal job joining up all of these organizations all over the world. So they're an organization called Three Lakes Partners. It was set up by a gentleman in Chicago who, you know, he's in his late 70s. His wife died from IPF, and he wants to make an impact on the disease. So, you know, that competition they ran in Chicago is only one, relative to other things they're planning, one small thing they're doing. They're working with partners around the world: China, Japan, Australia, UK, America, and they're really ambitious in the research they're planning on funding, and they want to speed up the development of new treatments, new diagnostics. So they're working on everything from, you know, how CT scans, how IPS can be detected more easily in CT scans, how GPs can be better trained. So everything from diagnosis, treatment, you know, and you know, kind of things like that we're doing. One thing that I haven't mentioned anything on, but we're also plugged into with our data set and our research, so we're starting to, is the whole genomics area. So, you know, more and more is being understood about IPF, and some IPF is definitely familial and genetics related. And, you know, the belief is that in the coming years, more will be understood in that area. But there definitely, you know, there's some genes where there's definitely familial or genetic links. And there's some, you know, gene mutations which people have, you know, a higher risk of different types of cancers and IPF. So there's a lot more being understood in that area. And in other diseases, and actually cystic fibrosis is a good example of this. Different treatments are being developed for different genetic variants of the disease. So I think that, you know, that might be something that could be coming in IPF as well. Okay. I hadn't heard that research. Okay. If some of you are really into reading on the research, study of bats actually is interesting in terms of what's happening in IPF. Certain species of bat, typically in the animal world, smaller animals live much shorter, and some species of bats live to well into their 40s, which for the size of the species is extremely unusual. And it's to do, there was, been a lot of research published on this, but some of it is to do with the telomeres and the fact that in bats, the telomere doesn't shorten, so they're not aging, and some variants of IPF are to do with mutations in that area, or the telomere shortening. And really what that's down to is the lung is aging prematurely. And there's a lot of study in this particular area of what can be learned in other domains and what could be applied in the development of new treatments in this area. Now, this sort of study, bringing things to market, is probably a long way off, but that's where the research is going. But there is potential for other treatments coming through in the next few years as well. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. 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 Touch wood, indeed. So you've had no decline in lung function so far, no? So lung function tests, so the spirometry, are not a good diagnostic tool, but they're a very good monitoring tool. So for diagnostic, it needs to be high resolution CT scan and possibly biopsy, because the whole problem. So if you're diagnosed, spirometry, a lung function test, is a very good way of monitoring. But the percent predicted, if you're, let's say for the sake of argument, someone who's been extremely active in sports and someone who did swimming, and they might have a much higher percent predicted FVC than would be expected. And let's say then, when they hit their 50s, they start getting some lung function decline, lung disease, and then maybe by the time they go for a lung function test, they still might be around 100% percent predicted. So it's a very bad diagnostic tool. But if you've had a disease diagnosed, or at least a risk of a disease diagnosed, monitoring your rate of decline or monitoring your how level your function is a very good monitoring tool. Bad diagnostic, good monitoring tool is how I summarize it. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. 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 No problem at all. Yeah. 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 No problem at all. Just one or two very, very brief points then, just while we're wrapping up. So we actually, as part of the NICE, we helped put together a report, from the data in our database, and we got the BLF to comment. We got one of the doctors in St. Mary's to comment. John Conway, who heads the support group in St. Mary's, who actually has familial IPS, he commented on it. So basically, we were trying to use our data to demonstrate the number of people that are excluded from ESBRI and OFA based on the NICE guidelines. So about 50% of our patient population would be excluded. And that was a link to that story. We're doing a lot of work on air quality as well, and we're talking to the British Lung Foundation about this, and we're talking to the British Lung Foundation about a partnership in this area. And one final thing I was going to mention, for those of you interested in pulmonary rehab, we're doing a webinar Wednesday next week, the 21st at 3 p.m. So you can just go onto our Facebook page and there'll be a live video there, and you can ask questions of Dr. Noah Greenspan. He's considered an expert in the world in pulmonary rehab. So even if you don't catch it next Wednesday, you'll be able to watch it on playback. And correct, yeah. Exactly, yes. And that's back to what I was saying about the clinical trials. We're able to, again, someone might know it within a hospital, but we're able to produce that data really quickly, and we were able to send it to the people in St. Mary's and to the British Lung Foundation. And we think that will help with lobbying and for getting hopefully that decision overturned. Yes, definitely. Yeah. Because I think there definitely will be more genes identified than the ones they have already identified. I think there will be more. So you can download, the link to download the app is from our website. You can reach me, Eamon@patientMpower.com, or the one that's on the screen there, info@patientMpower.com will reach me as well. So if any of you have any questions, happy to answer them. No problem. Thank you for your time. See you. Bye-bye.